It's time for The Real Messiah with your host, Messianic Jewish author and scholar, Dr. Michael Brown. Here to open up the scriptures, answer your questions, and help you discover Israel's true Messiah. Join the discussion now by calling 866-34-TRUTH. That's 866-34-TRUTH. Here again is Dr. Michael Brown.
Well, it is great to be with you tonight, and the big question that we want to answer on tonight's Real Messiah broadcast is a simple one. Are Messianic Jews, Jews who believe in Jesus, Jews who believe that Jesus is the Messiah, are Messianic Jews true Jews? Are we real Jews, or are we Christians posing as Jews? Christians trying to give a deceptive appearance to the world? Christians misleading the Jewish people? Here's the number to call. You can weigh in on this subject tonight, 866-34-TRUTH, 866-348-7884. Normally, on the Real Messiah broadcast, we concentrate on one aspect of this question, which is Jesus the Messiah of Israel? And we respond to objections to his messiahship. We take calls from folks who disagree with us. And of course, the phone lines are open for that as well tonight. But we want to come at this from a little different angle and ask the question about, are Messianic Jews really Jews? Can we lay claim to being Jews in the sight of God, in the sight of the nations, in the sight of the rest of the people of Israel? And as always, my special welcome to all of our friends listening on 570 AM, the Mission WMCA, all over New York City. Thanks so much for joining in tonight. Those watching around the world via internet, welcome to the broadcast. Our friends watching from Israel, from Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, wherever else in Israel you're watching, welcome to the broadcast. All right. Why am I especially bringing up this topic tonight? Well, it's very simple. This week, there was a tremendous furor over the fact that Vice President Mike Pence invited a Messianic Jewish leader, a Messianic rabbi, to pray at a rally in Detroit in memory of the victims in Pittsburgh. The horrific synagogue massacre took place this past Shabbat, the worst shedding of Jewish blood in our nation's history. Obviously, this causes Jewish people all over the country to feel a unique pain because we know that anti-Semitism can raise its ugly head at any time, in any place. And let's remember that during Nazi Germany, someone like me, a Jewish believer in Jesus, I would have been headed for the concentration camps just the same as a religious Jewish rabbi, a traditional rabbi, just the same as a secular Jew. We'd all be shipped off to our deaths the same way. So this is something that, as a Jewish person, I've written about a lot over the years. My most translated book that's been continuously in print since 1992 is Our Hands Are Stained with Blood, which tells the story of anti-Semitism in church history. But it also talks about the phenomenon of anti-Semitism, the phenomenon of Jew hatred, how it's the world's longest hatred, and the world's most irrational hatred, and the world's most widespread hatred, and the world's most violent hatred. And on it goes. It's a unique hatred among world hatreds, and it's because of God's choosing our people, the Jewish people, to be a light to the nations. And it's because Jesus, Yeshua, the Messiah, comes through the Jewish people, which is why Yeshua says in John 4, salvation is of the Jews. Salvation is from the Jews. This message of redemption and the means of redemption come through the Jewish people, not because of our goodness, but because of God's goodness and because of the Messiah's goodness. So anti-Semitism, we know, is always there. Louis Farrakhan, leader of the Nation of Islam, recently said, I'm not anti-Semite, I'm anti-termite. What a horrific, ugly comment. In Nazi Germany, in times past in our history, we've been compared to parasites, these bloodsuckers that drain the host and destroy it and do no good and add no good. Well, now we're compared to being termites. What do you do with termites? These miserable bugs that just eat away at the wood in your house and destroy your good house. You exterminate termites. So this type of ugliness is always here. And it is very true. And Dennis Prager has emphasized this, and Ben Shapiro has emphasized this. Other Jewish leaders have emphasized this. My friend Rabbi Shmuley has emphasized this, that America is the most Jew-friendly Gentile nation in world history in terms of a country that has had a substantial Jewish population. No country has been more friendly to the Jewish people than America. And I believe that's one reason God has smiled on us. Despite our many faults and failings, God has really smiled on us as a nation. But what about what happened with Vice President Mike Pence? Vice President Pence, who specifically called up Messianic Jewish leader Lauren Jacobs, who is the rabbi of Congregation Shema Israel, and asked him to lead in prayer. And Lauren Jacobs, as someone who is an unashamed Jewish follower of Jesus, did what you'd expect him to do. He prayed in Yeshua's name. He referenced Jesus, the Messiah, our Savior. He referenced the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as his Father and his God as well. And there is quite an uproar over it. In fact, in a moment, we will look at some of the headlines from, major news outlets reporting on this. And I want to share my own perspective as to whether Mike Pence did the right thing or not, whether it's right for there to be an uproar, but then get to the ultimate question, which is, are Messianic Jews really Jews? Are Messianic Jews true Jews? I was sent a link shortly before the show by my colleague, Rabbi Yisrael Blumenthal. We are on the opposite ends of this. He has written much to oppose what I believe. And he posted an article in response to my article that we'll look at, saying very clearly that Messianic Jews are not practicing Judaism in any way, and that our views are idolatrous. Is he right? Is he correct? 866-348-7884 is the number to call. And what I want to do is look at a couple different aspects of this, all right? And by the way, if you are a Jewish believer in Jesus, if you're a Jewish believer in Jesus yourself, and you say, hey, I was totally secular before I came to faith in Jesus, and I have much deeper identification with the God of Israel, with the people of Israel, with the Torah of Israel, as a follower of Jesus than I did before as a secular Jew. Hey, let us hear that and know that as well. I constantly hear that story. I constantly hear that testimony. In fact, it's the story of my own life as well, that before I was a follower of Jesus the Messiah, I was totally secular. I was totally worldly. And many of you know I was a heavy drug-using rebel playing drums in a rock band and got radically born again, found new life in the Messiah, received a new heart in 1971, almost 47 years ago now, the end of 1971. So I would not have learned Hebrew. I would not have been studying the Hebrew Bible. I would not have been worshiping the God of Israel with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength. I would not have had great solidarity with the people of Israel on the path that I was headed. I would have just been some drug-using hedonist. So it is by faith in Jesus the Messiah that my own sense of Jewishness and Jewish identity and Jewish burden and calling has come alive. But let's take a look at some of the headlines that were out there. All right. Well, we'll start with one on GQ. Mike Pence is under fire for appearing with a fake rabbi to commemorate the Pittsburgh shooting. Let me read this again. This is GQ magazine. Mike Pence is under fire for appearing with a fake rabbi to commemorate the Pittsburgh shooting. How about this headline from AT&T? AT&T News Service says this: Mike Pence causes outrage with, quote, Christian rabbi. Yeah, sounds self-contradictory, doesn't it? Mike Pence causes outrage with, quote, Christian rabbi. And then NBC News reported it like this: Pence sets off firestorm with campaign prayer by, quote, Christian rabbi. This is NBC News. Again, using Christian rabbi in quotes. Pence sets off firestorm with campaign prayer by Christian rabbi. Now, an aide to the vice president said, we often have ecumenical prayers at the beginning of events that aren't an endorsement of any particular faith, but was this the right ecumenical prayer to pray? How about this? Washington Post headline. Honoring Pittsburgh synagogue victims, Pence appears with, quote, rabbi who preaches, quote, Jesus is the Messiah. Friends, this is being widely reported, especially in the Jewish world. So again, the Washington Post headline, honoring Pittsburgh synagogue victims, Pence appears with, quote, rabbi who preaches, quote, Jesus is the Messiah. And then New York Times reported it like this. Rabbi with Jews for Jesus gives prayer at Pence rally causing backlash. All right? That's New York Times. Rabbi with Jews for Jesus gives prayer at Pence rally causing backlash. And then finally, Times of Israel. And I could multiply these headlines. I could go on for quite a while with relevant headlines, as is understandable. Outrage as Pence brings out Messianic, quote, rabbi to pray for synagogue victims. So the fact that you have a Jewish believer in Jesus, the fact that he is called a rabbi, was taken as extremely offensive by Jews in America and around the world. And I fully understand why, and it was a mistake, and it should not have happened. Let me say that again. I fully understand why. This was a mistake. This should not have happened. Was it an innocent mistake? According to everything I know, yes. And I'm going to get into the background in a minute. But in short, Lena Epstein herself, a Reformed Jew, liberal Jew, who says she is the only female Jewish Republican, all right? She invited Lauren Jacobs to pray at the beginning of the rally. Vice President Pence, a committed evangelical Christian and a great lover of the Jewish people and a real friend of Israel. He heard the prayer, liked it, and asked him to pray later. And I want to read you a statement from Lena Epstein in a moment. But it was a mistake. It was definitely a mistake. Now, on her part, it's to her credit that she has a relationship with a Messianic Jewish leader. That's to her credit. That's positive. And as we'll emphasize in a moment, we are Jews. We are Jews. And whether society recognizes it or not, or rabbis recognize it, or other Jews recognize it, is utterly secondary to me because God recognizes it. And that's the endorsement, the recognition I need. And let me say this, Jewishness in itself doesn't save you or damn you. Being in right relationship with God saves you or damns you. So that's all secondary to the larger issue of, are you in right relationship with God? Jew, Gentile, male, female, whoever, are you in right relationship with God? That's the big question. So whether the world recognizes me as Jewish or not is totally secondary. I address the issues for educational purposes, not for affirmational purposes. I receive my affirmation from above, not from someone patting me on the back, not from a rabbi saying to me, Mike, we recognize you as a Jew. Because that same rabbi thinks that I'm a Jewish apostate, thinks I'm deceived or a deceiver of others. All right? So this is for educational purposes, not for affirmational purposes. But I fully understand why the Jewish community was upset, rightly so. Was it an innocent mistake by Mike Pence? As far as I know, yes. As far as I know, it was an innocent mistake and shouldn't be held against him. As far as I know, he simply heard someone pray, liked the prayer, and said, well, you come out and pray later. And maybe in a very naive way, in a positively naive way, because each of us can have a naive blind spot where we don't recognize a controversy because it's not a controversy to us. He could have thought, oh, he's a Jewish believer in Jesus. Oh, great. And, all the more for an ecumenical prayer or whatever. Okay. But not at this time. At this time, it's pouring salt into Jewish wounds. At this time, it's an unnecessary provocation. At this time, it's an insult. At this time, it raises a controversy that ought not to be raised. All right. You see, why are you talking about? I'm now speaking into the larger controversy and trying to do so in a way that is helpful and holistic. So, first thing, should it have happened? No. Did it have malice? Did it have evil intent? Certainly not on the part of the congressional representatives, certainly not on the part of Lena Epstein herself, a Jew in a Reformed congregation, not a Messianic congregation. Certainly no ill intent on her end from everything we can see. And certainly it's not like Mike Pence to do that kind of thing to provoke or to insult the Jewish community. But it shouldn't have happened, and I understand why people are upset. Is Lauren Jacobs a fake rabbi? And are we, who are followers of Jesus and Jews, are we still Jews? That's the next question that we get to. Let's look at some of the tweets that were sent out in response to this. Hang on. I'm having a problem doing that from within my account here. I've just got to switch over to another screen, if that is okay, and try from there. Otherwise, Caleb, if you could grab that first tweet there. This is Rabbi Danya Rutenberg, who is obviously herself a liberal rabbi. How do I know? Because she's Jewish. She's a rabbi. She's a woman. She could not be an Orthodox rabbi. And here's what she writes. This to me is a very, very wrong and ugly tweet. Dear Pence, so complete lack of respect for the vice president. Dear Pence, please give up the pretense of Jewish presence. You are a Christian supremacist. We know that. You know that. Also, we will defeat you. But in the meantime, just stop pretending and appropriating my people. That's ugly. That's wrong. What he did, I believe, was done innocently. What she tweeted was, in my view, mean-spirited and even arrogant. How about this tweet? And this one was from Orly Matlow. The Twitter handle, Hire Me, I'm Funny, so presumably comedian. Well, this I thought was cute. Mike Pence's rabbi equals fake Jews. Oh, yeah, if you got fake news with Donald Trump, how about fake Jews? I thought that was funny, but of course wrong. And in fact, I don't know about Orly Matlow's own lifestyle and practice, but it could well be that many Messianic Jews are much more observant as Jews than she is. I don't know that. I'm just saying, could well be. All right, and how about this one? I'm just grabbing some of the comments that were made that were the most got the most attention in the press. How about this tweet? This was from Raphael Shimonov. In response to anti-Semitic white nationalist attack, Vice President Pence opens campaign with a Christian rabbi. So he is simply reporting on things, but in his mind, this is obviously outrageous. And once again, he calls Lauren Jacobs a Christian rabbi. A couple more tweets for you. This is from Jeet here. 2 days after the worst anti-Semitic massacre ever on American soil, the vice president appears at an event with a group whose main purpose is to proselytize Jews and convert them to Christianity. Now, again, that's what made what Vice President Pence did so controversial. All right, that's what made his calling up Rabbi Lauren Jacobs, Messianic Rabbi Lauren Jacobs, so controversial. And again, I fully understand the controversy, but the goal of Jews for Jesus is not to convert Jews away from being Jews and to convert them to Christianity. The goal is to turn their hearts to recognize Jesus, Yeshua, as the Messiah. Some may join churches. Some may be utterly absorbed in Christianity. Many others will join Messianic congregations and will raise their kids to understand that they are Jewish. I was talking to one of our grandsons the other day, and his mom mentioned, our daughter mentioned, that it's very important to him to be Jewish. That is something in his identity that has value and meaning to him. And we shall see how that fleshes out in his own life in the years to come. The point is this, that putting our faith in Jesus the Messiah deepens our recognition of our calling as Jews to be a light to the world, and deepens, in fact, brings us into a vibrant living relationship with the God of Israel. It does not turn us in another direction. Now, here's what Lena Epstein said. She is a U.S. House candidate in a particular district in Michigan. This was what she tweeted out. It was her statement on Jewish faith and religious tolerance. She said, "My family's history as Jews and my commitment to my being Jewish faith are beyond question. And my commitment, to my Jewish faith are beyond question. I'm a proud, lifelong fourth-generation member and former board member of Temple Bethel in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. Earlier this year, my daughter Emma received her Hebrew name on the Bema, that's the platform, at Temple Bethel. I invited the prayer because we must unite as a nation," meaning Lauren Jacobs, "while embracing our religious differences in the aftermath of Pennsylvania. Any media or political competitor who is attacking me or the vice president is guilty of nothing short of religious intolerance and should be ashamed. This was an effort of unity, yet some are trying to create needless division to suit their political goals. Now is the time for people of all faiths, of all religions, to come together as one and reject hate and religious divisions. That means Christians, Jews, Muslims, and everyone else who will stand together, hold hands in unity against evil, and speak from our individual hearts with one voice. I'm proud of my faith and look forward to serving as the only Jewish Republican woman in Congress." Now, I appreciate her sentiments. I really do. I appreciate her sentiments in saying, let's come together and let's be ecumenical in terms of standing together against hatred and violence. Listen, I stand side by side with Jews, with Christians, with Muslims, with atheists, with others when it comes to renouncing acts of terrorism. If there is a peace-loving Muslim that stands against this, if there's an atheist that stands against this, if there's a devout Christian that stands against this, if there's an Orthodox rabbi that stands against this, I stand united with them against those things, although we're deeply divided on many other issues. So I appreciate her sentiment. However, if she was going to do that, then for the sake of sensitivity to the Jewish community, then have a Christian pastor pray, who is not a Messianic Jewish leader, who is not a congregational Messianic rabbi. Have a Christian pastor pray and say, at a time like this, we want to bring others together with us, and we want to stand against this violence and stand against the plague of anti-Semitism. So I'm asking my friend, Pastor so-and-so, who's a great lover of the Jewish people as well, I'm asking him to pray. That would have been far better as an ecumenical move. If you're going to do something and you want it to be sensitive to a hurting, grieving Jewish community at this time, then by all means, invite a traditional rabbi or a rabbi that would be accepted by a wider swath of the community. But the plot thickens. There was criticism of the chief Ashkenazi rabbi of Israel, and not only of him, but of ultra-Orthodox Jewish publications in Israel, none of whom referred to the synagogue in which 11 Jews were massacred, all of them older, some elderly, up to 97 years old, if you can imagine that. All of them spoke with horror and grief about the events, but none of them referred to the place in which they were killed as a synagogue. Not one of them. This is according to reports that I read in ultra-Orthodox Jewish publications and on the lips of the chief Ashkenazi rabbi of Israel. He referred to the synagogue as a place of great Jewish sentiment or attachment. I'll get the exact words in a moment. Why did they all say that? Because they don't recognize liberal Judaism as true Judaism. They recognize the practitioners as Jews. But if it is conservative or reform, which are liberal forms of Judaism compared to ultra-Orthodoxy, they don't believe that is valid Judaism. I had ultra-Orthodox Jews tell me in 1973 that these rabbis, reform rabbis, conservative rabbis, most of them weren't really rabbis. So all I'm saying is the same way that you have different Jews, secular Jews, liberal Jews, saying Lauren Jacobs is a fake rabbi. Lauren Jacobs is a fake rabbi. Messianic Jewish rabbis are fake rabbis. They're not real rabbis. There are ultra-Orthodox Jews who represent a growing part of the population of Israel, maybe up to 15% now, ultra-Orthodox, certainly approaching that they say about conservative and reform rabbis, they're not really rabbis, and that is not really Judaism, and that's not really a synagogue. I just find that to be very interesting and somewhat ironic. In fact, in one of the articles that was attacking Messianic Jews, it noted that Messianic Jews are not recognized as Jews by the chief rabbinate of Israel, and their religion is not recognized as Judaism. I thought, wasn't that interesting? Because these same ultra-Orthodox Jewish leaders in Israel don't recognize Reform Judaism or conservative Judaism as real Judaism. In fact, if you get married in Israel, it has to be by an Orthodox rabbi. If you want a Jewish marriage in Israel, right, if you want to get married by in a Muslim ceremony or Christian ceremony or something like that, fine. But if you want to get married as a Jew in Israel, it has to be under the supervision of Orthodox rabbis. If not, it is not considered valid. In fact, if you are a liberal Jew and you become ultra-Orthodox, maybe you're married and your spouse doesn't want to follow you into ultra-Orthodoxy, that there are rabbis who will tell you, well, that marriage wasn't valid in the first place because it wasn't performed by an Orthodox rabbi. So here, when we have liberal Jews saying that Messianic Jews are not really Jews, or liberal Jews saying that Messianic rabbis are not really rabbis, is that the pot calling the kettle black? And you'd say, big difference, big difference. Messianic Jews are idol worshipers. Messianic Jews believe that Jesus is God. Messianic Jews believe in the Trinity. Therefore, they are completely outside the Jewish faith. All right, we'll have that discussion. We'll talk about that on The Real Messiah. If you've got a question about any of these issues of which we're speaking, a question about Messianic Jews, are they Christians just posing as Jews, putting on a yarmulke or adding a little Hebrew here or there, we'll take that up as well. 866-348-7884 is the number to call. And as always, I want to give this invitation. Listen, I know, in a sense, it's like fishing. You keep throwing the line out because I'll hear from people privately as opposed to publicly, all right? But I'll still keep throwing the line out. If you are listening to the broadcast in New York City, all right? If you're in Brooklyn right now, if you are yourself a frum Jew, maybe you're a Chassid, but you're an ultra-Orthodox Jew, you're listening secretly, maybe you followed me for years secretly. If there's a way that you can call in, you don't have to give me your name, come up with another name, all right? Disguise your accent if you want. But give me a call, and maybe we could have a friendly conversation. Or if you can shoot us an email at our website, askdrbrown.org, askdrbrown.org. Shoot us an email. We won't expose your identity. We won't put you on a mailing list. But let us help you. Hey, friends, this is Michael Brown. You know, over the years, going on almost 50 years now of interacting with our Jewish people about Jesus, there's so many objections that have been raised. I wrote 5 whole volumes, over 1,500 pages, on answering Jewish objections to Jesus, and then recorded a 22-hour lecture series on the same subject. But that's a lot of material to take in. I want to put something in your hands absolutely free. If you are a Jewish person wanting to find out the truth about Jesus the Messiah, I want to put this book in your hands absolutely free. It's a mini book. It's an easy read, but it's a page turner. Each new page you'll be wanting to turn the next. It's called 7 Secrets of the Real Messiah. You can get it as a mini book in paperback, or you can get the ebook. Now here's how you get it. Go to my website, realmessiah.com. That's realmessiah.com, and click on the free ebook offer, and then explore the website. You'll find testimonies of other Jewish people who believe in Jesus the Messiah. You'll find teachings we do on the feasts and holy days and rabbinic literature and insights from there into Jesus being the Messiah. We even have a synopsis of major objections with video and written answers, all waiting for you at realmessiah.com. Get the free mini book today.
It's time for The Real Messiah with your host, Dr. Michael Brown. Join the discussion now by calling 866-34-TRUTH. Here again is Dr. Michael Brown.
Thanks, friends, for joining us on The Real Messiah. Hey, just a further word of encouragement. If you have not yet gotten the free ebook, 7 Secrets of the Real Messiah, it represents many, many years of research and reflection, and then boiled down into 7 simple points, which you can then get further information in my book, The Real Kosher Jesus. But we boil them down for you, give you the essence of them in this free mini book, this free ebook. Download it. Won't cost you anything. Again, we're not going to expose your identity to anyone. You can read it on your cell phone or somewhere in the library where you can have access to a computer. No one can see. If you need to be secretive about this, we understand. We want to protect your secrecy and help you seek God freely and earnestly, and let us give you information that will help. So I wrote an article, and it's on stream.org, and it asked the question, did Mike Pence ask, quote, a fake rabbi to pray for the synagogue victims? And there's a picture of Messianic Rabbi Lauren Jacobs. What about the idea of fake rabbi? Should Messianic Jewish leaders be called rabbi? I understand why that's controversial. I fully understand that, because rabbi has a certain connotation in the Jewish community. And perhaps in the early years of the modern Messianic Jewish movement, the congregational movement, there were folks who were born-again Christians of Jewish extract, and they said, we want to recover our Jewish roots, and people think that if they follow Jesus, they're no longer Jewish, so instead of being called pastor, we'll be called rabbi, and we'll incorporate some Hebrew prayers in the service. And maybe it was superficial at first, and maybe it was primarily to help bridge that gap and tell Jewish people, hey, you still be a Jew and follow Jesus. But as someone who's been an eyewitness to it from the inside and from many other different angles for decades now, I can tell you that Messianic Jews are very serious about being Jews. You say, well, they worship idols. No. We don't worship idols. We worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We worship the God of Israel. We worship the God of the Tanakh, of the Hebrew Scriptures. And he has most fully revealed himself to us through Jesus, Yeshua, the Messiah. And I'm happy to debate that just using the Tanakh, just using the Hebrew Scriptures, let alone having to use the Messianic writings, the New Covenant writings. Certainly our emphases are different. Certainly a traditional Jew has a different emphasis than a Messianic Jew, of course. But if you say, is Jewish identity something that plays a role in your life? Yes. If you say of your average Messianic Jewish congregation, do you follow the biblical calendar? Do you celebrate Passover versus Easter and Hanukkah versus Christmas? And you keep and observe the major biblical feasts? Yes. And do you emphasize the importance of passing on a certain legacy to your children and their children? Yes. Yes. So I remember when I was in debate with some of my Messianic Jewish colleagues years ago, and I was saying, if we use the term rabbi, which, by the way, is not used in Messianic congregations in Israel. They don't use that term, interestingly enough. It's used in America and other countries. So one of my friends, I said, I don't think we should use the name because we get accused of being deceptive and misleading, and that's not who we are. So why be open to that charge? Let's preach what we preach, and let's just say we have, congregational leader. If pastor sounds too Christian and Gentile, we just say congregational leader. So the leader of our congregation, the Messianic rabbi of our congregation, he said to me, look, he said, what do I tell this woman? She's an elderly Jewish woman. She just came to faith in Yeshua. And she said, rabbi. And he said, look, and he just said, this is my name. You just call me by my first name. She goes, no, you're my rabbi. You lead the congregation. You're my rabbi. We worship on Shabbat. We celebrate the feasts. We're following the Jewish Messiah. Why shouldn't I call you rabbi? So what I've personally done, so that no one could ever think I'm trying to be deceptive about this. And if you look at me, I'm not trying to look like a religious Jew. I'm not trying to put on. If I lived that way and that was important to me, then that's how I'd look, okay? But I'm not trying to give that impression, all right? So I don't like anything that anyone could think is being deceptive, all right? If you say, I think you're wrong on this, okay, we can have that debate. But you're not going to be able to say, well, you're trying to deceive us, because that's not who I am. That's not what I would do. So what I've done is referred to people as Messianic rabbis. So I'm making a clear distinction. This person is not a traditional rabbi, a Reform rabbi, a conservative rabbi, Reconstructionist rabbi. This person is a Messianic rabbi. They are leading a Messianic congregation. The people in the congregation are likely to be more observantly Jewish than those in a Reformed congregation and maybe even a conservative congregation, certainly Reconstructionist congregation. So based on that, yeah, I gladly say, Messianic rabbi. So I make that distinction. That's my way of trying to be as accurate and honest as I can. So here's what I point out in my article. All right. I make 5 points about Vice President Pence and what he did. But then I, if you scroll down, Caleb, to where it says a sect of Judaism, that's put in by the editors at the stream. Those aren't my words there. Okay. A sect of Judaism. But I make this point. Fifth, Messianic Jews are Jews. And I say this, the New York Times actually stated that, yes, okay, we've got to scroll all the way down to point number 5. There we go. And if you're listening, think, well, scroll down. Yeah, we're also doing this on video. And I want to get to your calls very shortly, okay? So let's go down. Keep going down. Keep scrolling down. Nope. Went too far. It's where it says a sect of Judaism. A little bit further up and we'll find it. So the last point that I make is Messianic Jews are Jews. The New York Times actually stated that the sect of Judaism Jacobs represents, Messianic Judaism, is viewed by some critics as a threat to the religion. But note, the Times referred to Messianic Judaism as a sect of Judaism, which is how things started in the beginning. In other words, the first followers of Jesus were all Jews, and they believed that he was the promised Messiah of Israel. Their fellow Jews recognized them as Jews, followers of a new sect of Judaism. It was not a debate about that in the beginning. It was only later, when most of Jesus' followers were Gentiles, when Easter had taken the place of Passover, when Trinitarian beliefs were considered heretical, that these Jewish followers of Jesus were largely excluded from their Jewish communities. Now, let me just pause there on that one statement. What do I mean when I say when Trinitarian beliefs were considered heretical? I was trying to pack a lot into a little phrase. So I believe it's very, very clear from the outset, from the earliest writings in the New Testament, that the followers of Jesus Yeshua recognized him as divine. They recognized him as the Word made flesh. They recognized him as the divine Son, the divine Messiah. They prayed to him. There was worship directed to him. He is referred to as my Lord and my God. So there's no question that they held to those things. However, how much of that was understood by the wider Jewish community, that can be debated. So my point was, by the time that beliefs were formulated in such a way as what we understand as Trinitarian beliefs, at that point, there was clear rejection by the Jewish community. Okay? That's the only point I was making. I was accused of rewriting history. I'm not rewriting history. I'm saying it as accurately as I can, as concisely as I can. All right, so to keep reading, to repeat, the first followers of Jesus Yeshua, all of them Jews, were fully accepted as Jews by their contemporaries. As for today, to be totally candid, there was a lot of superficiality in the early days of the modern Messianic Jewish movement. I've just explained that. But over the years, the movement has demonstrated its commitment to preserving Jewish identity to the point that, 1, many Messianic Jews have made Aliyah to Israel. 2, the children of these Israeli Messianic Jews serve in the IDF. 3, they are often more observant than the bulk of the Israeli population, which is predominantly secular. And this holds true in the United States as well, where members of Messianic Jewish congregations are often more observant than their liberal Jewish friends and families. As noted by Professor David J. Rudolph, the 1990 National Jewish Population Survey interviewed a broad spectrum of the American Jewish community, including Messianic Jews. One survey question asked, is being Jewish very important in your life? According to the findings, 100% of all Messianic Jews interviewed said yes to the survey question. This was higher than any other Jewish group interviewed, including Orthodox, 77%, Conservative, 58%, Reform, 40%, Reconstructionist, 49%. And among the Orthodox, I would have thought 100% there too. So I'm just reporting what was given in this Jewish survey, where it was 77% versus 100% of Messianic Jews. In contrast with this, NBC News noted that Messianic Judaism, which believes that Jesus is the Messiah and considers the New Testament to be authentic, is not recognized as Jewish by any mainstream Jewish movement in the United States or by the chief rabbinate, the supreme spiritual authority for Judaism in Israel. Ironically, it appears that Alex Johnson, who wrote the NBC article, was unaware that the chief rabbinate of Israel, which is ultra-Orthodox, does not recognize Reform or conservative Judaism as authentic Judaism. In fact, as reported by the Jewish Forward, Israel's Ashkenazi chief rabbi came under fire on Sunday for refusing to acknowledge in a newspaper interview that the massacre in Pittsburgh was carried out in a synagogue. Rather, he referred to the synagogue as, quote, a place with a profound Jewish flavor, but to him it was not a synagogue because it was not Orthodox. And the fact is, most all the rabbis I've debated over the years say, you're still a Jew. You're a Jew. We just believe you're a Jew that's deceived, or a Jew that's gone astray, or a Jew that's apostate, or a Jew that is walking in ignorance, or whatever. But the reason that the Jewish community reached out to me over the years is because they recognize me as a Jew. And again, I'm not looking for affirmation from the Jewish community. I embrace the rejection. I understand. It's going to come my way. Doesn't make me a martyr or a hero. I just mean, following Jesus, Yeshua, you understand you're going to be rejected, misunderstood by your people. That's what's going to happen. You pray for them all the more. Your heart breaks for them all the more, especially those who are very sincere in their Judaism. But bottom line is this. The ultimate issue then is Jesus the Messiah of Israel? Isn't that what it comes down to? If he is the Messiah of Israel, which of course he is, then we are the most authentic Jews on the planet in embracing him. And if he is, in fact, the Word made flesh, the full expression of God, but in earthly form, while God remains enthroned and invisible in heaven, if seeing him is seeing the Father, then all worship of Yeshua is worship of the one true God, the God of Israel, who in the Hebrew Scriptures is complex in his unity. All right, before I go to the phones, let me read to you a quote from Professor Benjamin Sommer. He is a professor, Hebrew Bible, ancient Near Eastern languages at Jewish Theological Seminary. He is not a believer in Jesus. He is not a Messianic Jew. He is not a Christian. He does not preach these things or believe in these things. Is that clear? I do not want to misrepresent him in any way. He is not a traditional Jewish scholar. He is not a fundamentalist Jewish scholar. He is a conservative Jewish scholar, a biblical scholar and Semitic scholar. So he is discussing the issue of the Trinity. And listening to a lecture of his that was on YouTube, the beginning of it, he says he was not happy with these things that he found. In his research and study, he wasn't happy with it as a Jew. But here's what he writes. Some Jews, and by the way, this is in his book, The Bodies of God, a scholarly Old Testament Semitic work, The Bodies of God. He says this, some Jews regard Christianity's claim to be a monotheistic religion with grave suspicion, both because of the doctrine of the Trinity, how can three equal one, and because of Christianity's core belief that God took bodily form. But he says this, no Jew sensitive to Judaism's own classical sources, however, can fault the theological model Christianity employs when it avows belief in a God who has an earthly body as well as a Holy Spirit and a heavenly manifestation. For that model we have seen is a perfectly Jewish one. He says this, a religion whose scripture contains the fluidity traditions, meaning God appearing in bodily form at different times and places, whose teachings emphasize the multiplicity of the Shekhinah, that is God's divine presence on the earth, and whose thinkers speak of the Sphirot, the emanations, the 10 emanations of God, does not differ in its theological essentials from a religion that adores the triune God. Isn't that fascinating? Those are the words of a highly respected professor, biblical and Semitic scholar at Jewish Theological Seminary. To repeat, he says those things with full knowledge that people like me could use that material to say, hey, look, this corroborates what I've said about Judaism and God's complex unity and things like that. He knows this is not going to be a popular thing to say in the Jewish world. And he's not a follower of Jesus. He does not agree with us, okay? He does not think Jews should believe in Jesus. I do not want to misrepresent him. Professor Summer, if you happen to be listening there in New York City, you hear me loud and clearly. I'm not trying to misrepresent you in any way. I'm simply saying that he came to the same conclusions I did based on the same sources. All right? Same conclusions in terms of it is biblical to believe in God's complex unity, God's triunity. And in fact, it even has some level of support from other Jewish sources, although these other Jewish sources categorically reject Jesus as the divine Messiah. All right, let me go to the phones. We'll start in New Jersey with Dave. Thank you, sir, for calling the Line of Fire.
Yes, Dr. Brown. How are you this evening?
I'm doing very well. Thank you.
Yes, I just want to say that in light of the events that took place on Saturday in Pittsburgh, let me say first of all that I am a practicing Muslim. I'm a convert.
You're all right. You are the Dave from New Jersey. I think the very first show we spoke, sir, if I'm correct. But go ahead. Thank you. I remember you, though. I remember you.
Yes, that's me. I just want to say that even though I disagree with you on so many different levels, tonight is not the night. I want to give my heartfelt condolences, to my Jewish brothers and sisters. This was clearly an act of hatred. It was anti-Semitic in nature, but it was anti-Muslim. It was anti-Christian. It was anti any people who are, people of faith and people who have moral values. And I'm going to be visiting one of my favorite synagogues this coming Shabbos here in Jersey, and I'm going to, make a donation to the shul, and I'm going to tell them to do whatever they can to support the families of the victims in Pittsburgh. This is a time when, we need to, just like we need to put politics aside sometimes, we need to put religious debate aside sometimes and come together to denounce this kind of evil, and I am a black man, and just as I condemn the senseless act of a crazed white nationalist, I condemn the anti-Semitic rhetoric of Louis Farrakhan.
Mm.
He does not speak for Muslims, and he does not speak for all blacks. As far as I'm concerned, the Nation of Islam is a cult. They are about as Islamic as the KKK is Christian.
Mm. Well, Dave, listen, I appreciate every syllable of every word that you just spoke, and I'm in complete harmony with you on that. And I want to express my honor and respect to you for calling in. You realize the reasons that we haven't taken calls over the months is not because
I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah. It's very simply that I opened the phone lines wider tonight. The whole purpose of our calls on Wednesday night, 99% of it, I want to speak to Jewish people who don't believe in Jesus, or to Christians who are talking to Jewish people and run into objections that they don't have answers to. On Thursday afternoons on our Line of Fire show, we take calls on every Jewish subject under the sun, and on Fridays on any subject under the sun. But we have lots of Christians calling in each week. They want to ask about a verse in the Hebrew Bible, or they have a difference here and there. So we've just tried to be very, very careful. And that's why we take so few calls on most Wednesday nights. That's why we often have calls from folks that really disagree with me very strongly from the Jewish community. But having said that, Dave, out of respect to you for your heart and what you're doing, if I see you with a question in the future that ties in, that seems relevant to the show, you come back on. All right? I want to do that to show my respect and esteem for you. Okay?
Okay, I'm glad you said that, because I was concerned.
No, you're one of many. You're one of many that doesn't get on a Wednesday night just because it's not the direction that we want to go with this one precious hour that we have. It was specifically for Jewish outreach. But if it's relevant, sir, you've got a question or a relevant objection, maybe even an Islamic objection, we'll get you back on. But God bless you, and thanks for your stand. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much. And reasonable people can disagree.
Yes, sir.
My mom used to say, "May she rest in peace." It's okay to disagree as long as you're not disagreeable.
Yeah, and disagreeable, that's bad enough, but demonizing others that you differ with, it's dangerous. We all need, from all of our different communities now, to speak with cool heads, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. And then we can sit down and have a serious conversation about our differences when we do that. Hey, Dave, thanks once more for calling. And let's go to Marie in Brooklyn. Welcome to The Line of Fire.
Thank you very much, and good evening to you.
Good evening.
My problem is kind of the opposite of what you're talking about. I was christened the Roman Catholic, but I follow the Jewish religion, and when people ask what religion I am, I tell them I am Judeo-Christian.
Tell me how you got where you are, Marie. The short version, because we're towards the end of the show. So I'm sure it's a long story, but the short version.
Yeshua Hey Mashiach. I heard a rabbi say that, and that's what I believe.
All right. Got it. Okay, so you're born into a Gentile home, christened as a Roman Catholic, but came to realize that Jesus is the Jewish Messiah, because of which you've attached yourself to the Jewish people.
Absolutely.
All right,
he was a Jew.
Got it. Marie, do you go actively to a congregation?
I would if I could, but as I told the person who answered the phone, my spine is broken and it's very painful, and it's broken in 4 places.
Oh my! All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's pray for miraculous recovery for you, Marie, and to our listeners and viewers. Let's pray for that. That must be terribly difficult. And
I appreciate that so much, because I believe in prayer.
Good. So Marie, if you could go to a congregation, would you be going to a church? Would you be going to a Messianic Jewish congregation?
Oh no, I would be going to a synagogue.
To a traditional synagogue.
Absolutely.
Got it. Okay, very, very interesting. What about the fact that that traditional synagogue does not believe in Jesus at all? Would that bother you?
No, it wouldn't, because I believe that's between a person and their own conscience and a person and the Mashiach himself.
Got it.
You know?
Got it. All right. So friends, I want you to hear what Marie's just said. Recognizing the Jewishness of Jesus, Yeshua, who in recorded history was the first person that we have recorded was called Rabbi. And then not John the Baptist, how about Yochanan the Immerser? John the Immerser, all right, known as John the Baptist, but he's also called Rabbi. The earliest recorded people to be called Rabbi in history. So Marie, Christian as a Roman Catholic, Gentile, believes that her faith is Judeo-Christian, and she feels so connected to the Jewish people because of this Jewish rabbi, this Savior, this Messiah, Yeshua, that she would rather go to a traditional synagogue than to a church. Marie, thanks for calling. Before you go, Father, we ask you to show your grace and your power and to heal her and to touch her right now and to do something miraculous on her behalf, that everyone might know that you are the living God, that your Son, the Messiah, is risen from the dead. Touch her and heal her to the astonishment of the doctors and to her great blessing and joy. We ask it in Yeshua's name. Hey, Marie, thank you so much for calling. Now, some of you think, oh, well, she's off. She's gone back into Judaism. What she's done is said, hey, the church swung so far over this way, it's completely forgotten its Jewish roots. We need to swing back. And she swung very much in another direction, but with the central figure being Jesus, Yeshua, the Messiah of Israel. You know, it's like that old saying, Jesus made me kosher. It's the reality. Yeshua is kosher for Jews, kosher for you. Open your heart to him. Talk to you next week. Hey friends, thanks so much for being part of today's broadcast. I want to speak to you for a moment. If you are a follower of Jesus the Messiah, would you partner with me in bringing the good news of Yeshua to the lost sheep of the house of Israel? Is there anything more sacred or precious we could do together in the Lord? Friends, we have resources we need to get out in Hebrew. We have enhancements we need to put on our Real Messiah website. We need more help to answer the many questions that come in from Jewish inquirers and from those wanting to know about the Jewish roots of the faith. And this is something we can do together with your help. Paul said the gospel is to the Jew first and also to the Gentile. So join with me today in reaching the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Right now, take a moment and go to Ask Dr. Brown, askdrbrown.org, and click on Donate.